High school is a turbulent time for many, and though crazy people say it was the best 4 years of my life, most of us remember acne, heartbreak, being grabbed by the school resource officer and slammed so hard into a concrete floor your shoulder audibly cracks, it takes you months to walk right again. Except for that last part. That's what Janissa Valdez would remember, but she hit her head in the incident too. The worst part about this case is that the only thing that makes it an outlier is that the officer was actually fired. This stuff happens a lot. And to note, it's been 61 years since the historic Brown v. Board of Education decision, which made it illegal for the government to segregate schools. Now, instead, they're segregated by what are known as zero-tolerance policies, funneling our vulnerable children out of schools and into the private prison system, in a process known as the school-to-prison pipe. According to data collected by the U.S. Department's Office for Civil Rights, students of color are 3 times more likely to be suspended than their white peers. This trend has been happening over the last 15 years, and it's getting worse, not better. The best way to fight discrimination is to talk about it, so today we're going to talk about it. Today, I'm going to discuss with you why I think we need to eliminate zero-tolerance policies from our schools, why we need to put discipline back into the hands of teachers and out of the hands of the police, why zero-tolerance policies are making things worse, and how they're sending our kids to prison instead of college. First, why we need to eliminate zero-tolerance policies. A study published just last year by the Education Research Alliance of New Orleans found that vulnerable students are 1.75 times more likely to be suspended than their wealthier peers. Another study by the U.S. Department of Education found that disabled children are 2 times more likely to be suspended, and students of color are 3 times as likely to be suspended than their white peers. This discrimination is not confined to school officials either. Shortly after the tragic Columbine shooting, police officers started being stationed in schools, and a report from 2017 by the NAACP shows that while black students make up only 12 to 13% of the population, they account for more than 39% of arrests made by school resource officers. What's more, the United States Department of Justice released a survey in 2005 called the National Assessment of Student Resource Officer Programs. And what they found was that 76% of students didn't want the officers in their schools. They made them feel less safe. But officers were just one of the measures taken after Columbine, and as we talked about, the other was zero-tolerance policy. Because these policies were implemented by lawmakers who are apparently immune to irony, they helped kids by kicking them out of school. Between 1974 and 2001, student suspensions were raised from 1.7 to 3.1 million students annually. But what would happen if we rescinded the policies? Well, in 2013, Lizette Alvarez with the New York Times interviewed school officials in Broward County, Florida, where these policies have already been rescinded. What she found was that suspensions had been lowered by 66%, while school-related arrests fell by 41% in 1 year. So what happens if we don't? That's probably a better question. Well, that's what's already happening. And that's that our kids are going to prison. Now, I've given you the numbers, the facts, the statistics. What I haven't told you is what happens to a child after they're kicked out of the school system. Once a child leaves the school system, they are 3 times more likely to come into contact with the law. If that student's incarcerated, their chances of going back to school fall by 13%, while their chances of going back to prison go up by 23%. And that was found by Peter Kizix with the MIT News office. It seems weird that in a country where we pledge liberty and justice for all, we're hurting the students who need our help the most. So what do? Well, like Starbucks, we can close our schools for a day for bias sensitivity training, or we could get zero-tolerance policies and student resource officers out of our schools. Now, Starbucks is a business. They get PR for closing for a day. Not dissing Starbucks in any way. Good for them. I'm glad they did it. But our schools aren't a business. At least they shouldn't be. Students don't want SROs. They make them feel less safe. And the fact is, if they're black, if they're disabled, if they're already struggling to put food on the table, they probably aren't safe with SROs in the schools. Zero tolerance policies. The bottom line is that they're sending our vulnerable children to prison. So, what are the steps we can take right now to solve this? You might not like this, but discrimination, it didn't start in the school system. It doesn't start in the school system. We can't cast this problem onto schools and tell them to solve discrimination. The problem starts out here, and the solution starts out here too. First of all, call your representatives. They're old, they don't do email. Call them. 2, when you see incidents like what happened at Starbucks where 2 innocent black men had the police called on them for existing, your phone has a camera. Use it. Stand up, document, say something. And 3, get involved with your schools and communities. These are the people we rely on for big social change. Today, we've discussed why zero tolerance policies and student resource officers are bad for our students, how we're sending vulnerable students to prison instead of college, and what possibly we can do about it. I want to leave you with this. Imagine you go to send your child to school and you have the idea that they're going to be educated. Imagine you find out a school resource officer slammed your child into the concrete floor so hard it took her months to walk right again. Liberty and justice for all? Not yet. Not even close. Done. That's my TED Talk. That was good.
Did you see